please welcome to the stage from Apple Product Marketing, Jeremy Butcher.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. As Dean said, my name is Jeremy Butcher. I'm from Product Marketing at Apple. The group that I'm a part of is specifically dedicated to building great features for enterprise and education customers. When I'm back in California, I am representing you and your organization's needs to the engineers and designers that are making great products at Apple. And when I'm at places like JNUC, I get to represent all the hard work that they do to build those products. So today I want to talk you through a little bit of our approach to building features for enterprise and education. And I want to do that through the lens of some of the most recent releases that we just had with macOS Catalina, iPadOS, and iOS 13. Now, at Apple, we don't typically spend a lot of time looking back at past accomplishments, but we're here at JNUC for the 10th anniversary, and so we thought it'd be fun to take a quick look at some of the things that didn't exist at all at that very first JNUC that many of us can't imagine being without today. So let's go back to 2009, when all of us were activating and syncing our brand new iPhone 3GS with iTunes. If you'll remember, the killer use case was that you could get email on your smartphone. And Macs were probably popping up in creative departments at different businesses, and you were probably managing policy with something like Workgroup Manager. You'll notice that I didn't mention iPad because it wasn't until a year later in 2010 that iPad was actually introduced for the very first time. It was also that year that the very first version of the MDM protocol for iOS was introduced, and it was actually the same year that Apple started becoming a customer of Jamf, something that continues to this day. A year later, we introduced volume purchasing so that the next killer use case could be that next killer app that you were finding on the App Store. 2 years later, we introduced Mavericks, which was the first free upgrade of macOS 10. And ushered in a new model for upgrading desktop operating systems that, interestingly enough, not everybody has quite caught on to just yet all these years later. A year later, we introduced device enrollment that completely changed the way that institutionally owned devices get enrolled into your organization. 2 years later, we introduced Apple School Manager, shared iPad and Classroom, bringing together all of the different pieces that schools need to deploy iPads and Macs to their students and teachers. In 2018, we followed that up with Apple Business Manager to bring all those features together for our business customers, and we also introduced something called Managed Software Updates that allows you to have control over the software update process within your organization. So here we are today, and virtually all of the Fortune 500 are using Apple products. We have hundreds of customers that are deploying tens of thousands of devices, so the scale is as impressive as the breadth. Our programs are in really great shape. We have over 150,000 organizations that are enrolled in Apple School Manager and Apple Business Manager across 69 countries, including 4 that we just introduced a couple of months ago. The momentum is really strong. In higher ed, we see students that are going to college choose Mac 59% of the time. And thanks to a survey from our friends here at Jamf, we know that 3 out of 4 employees, when given the choice, choose Apple. The use cases have evolved quite a bit as well. It's probably the case that many of you have experienced a mobile point-of-sale transaction that was powered by Apple technology even since you've been here. What started as the replacement for the the flight bag in aviation has expanded to all different aspects of flight operations. Healthcare professionals are using Apple products for clinical communications. And in education, we're sparking creativity and teaching kids how to code with things like iPad and Mac. So we're super excited with where we have been and where we are today. Now let me dive in a little bit on the approach that we take from the strategy side to get to where we are. 2 fundamental things, the product itself, and then, of course, a partner ecosystem. I'm going to spend more time on the product side, but let me let you understand a little bit more about the partner ecosystem. We recognize that we can't do everything, and in fact, there are amazing partners out there that do things that you need help with incredibly well. That's things like app development from partners like IBM, Accenture, and Deloitte. It's a partnership with Cisco that makes Apple products work best on Cisco networks. and its partnerships with folks like SAP and Salesforce to really tap into the power of your back-end systems, bringing the data that's in those places into the hands of users. And of course, partners like Jamf that bring it all together and get these devices out into the hands of students and employees. All right, on the product side, what do we do? There are a handful of areas that we look at every single year to try to move the ball forward. And what I want to walk you through is our approach to those different pillars to give you an understanding of what we're thinking about as we develop each operating system. With security, the whole goal is secure by design. You've heard us talk about building it in from the ground up, and really what that comes down to as much as possible is making it secure by default. What can we do to have something on with no off switch so that users aren't able to make a mistake from a configuration perspective, and they just get the security before additional configuration comes along. With management and deployment, the goal here is to provide you flexibility with all of the different device management models that you might need to support. We'll talk about user enrollment in a second. Dean mentioned that just a moment ago. But really, that whole end of one end of the spectrum to the other in terms of ownership of the device, all while making sure that we maintain user privacy. As identity becomes more and more important in organizations, really sitting at the crossroads between security and management and deployment, we want to make sure that it's deeply integrated into our operating systems so that you have this concept of an organization identity that is deeply embedded into the operating systems. And then with productivity, the whole goal here is to make our platforms more and more powerful for your users and for you, while maintaining that legendary ease of use that Apple is known for. So those are the goals that we have in mind, and every year we sit down and we look at ways that we can improve in those areas with all the different feature requests that we've seen from folks like you. So let me walk you through examples of that. Lucky enough to have an example for each one of those categories this year. With Mac security, we've got 3 big improvements that really raise the bar for the Mac: a read-only system volume. We have a new endpoint security framework that Dean mentioned already. And we have gatekeeper notarization. All of those things really have, like I said, that goal of making the system secure by default as much as possible. User enrollment for us is huge. This is an entirely new management model that really is designed to support employee or student-owned devices that has the goal of giving you the capabilities that you need to get the devices set up at scale, all while putting the privacy of the user at the front and center of everything. Single sign-on is designed to take advantage of the investment that you've been making over the last few years with your identity providers to consolidate identities and have a single point of entry into the apps that you're deploying within your organization. But it also brings along a really big end-user benefit so that they can easily sign into all of their apps through just a single operation. And then the last one here is iPad OS. This one obviously got a lot of fanfare over the summer. It's something that we're super excited about, but it's a great example of what we're talking about in terms of productivity because it brings improvements to multitasking, text editing, file management, and of course, that desktop class Safari browser. All of this is a result of your feedback. I really mean that. We listen to your requests all the time, so please keep it coming through whatever means you would like, because we get a lot of it, and that's great. The request that I have of you is that you always stay testing. As you know, there's pretty much always a beta that's available for you to be using on your systems to test out and help us really release the best thing possible. Thank you all very much. Thanks.